Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of ESI For All, the new Esports Insider podcast, where we aim to shed a light on the diverse people and organizations that make up the esports community. I'm your host, Riley Soley. I'm the Media Community and EDI Executive at Esports Insider. And today I'm joined by Riot Games' Product Lead for Game Changers EMEA, Ashley Washington. How are you doing today, Ashley?
I am doing really well. Lots of exciting things going on in esports, so never boring.
Oh, definitely. It's one of those industries, isn't it? Esports never sleeps.
Yes, absolutely.
And neither do I.
Oh man, how are you?
Oh, finally, I'm glad somebody's asked that question.
Love it.
Yeah, no, I'm good, thank you. I've actually just moved house, so I'm tired from like real life, not so much
Oh
esports right
wow.
now.
Okay. Yes. Oh, I do not envy you, but I hope it's going well.
Thank you. Yeah, it is going well. So, speaking of esports, how did you get started in esports?
Yeah. I mean, it started with gaming in general for me. I've been playing games since I was a kid. My whole family played. My parents played before I was born, and then I grew up in a family of people playing games. And in general, I think that I'd always kind of had some interest in competitive games casually. I didn't originally intend to get into gaming, so it didn't really get super serious for me for a long time. I would say it didn't really kick in for me until I was graduated from university. I went to New York University where I had studied game design. And then after this, I had started to think about like, oh, how can I like work with games? And esports seemed to be sort of the obvious answer to that because what I'd known of game development was kind of scary for me. I really like some degree of stability, and like developing games always seemed really scary to me. The game has to be like really good for it to like stick, and esports felt like this like living, breathing, ongoing, interesting thing that was sort of like the perfect fit for me. With gaming, getting into it was a bit harder, finding the space that needed my expertise and was also willing to welcome my expertise was like a kind of different struggle altogether, I would say. But it was definitely a combination of like leveraging my experience personally as a gamer and the skills I had developed in university to get to a place where I found my home in esports, which is product management.
Yeah, amazing. Like I think, like you said, esports is one of those like constantly growing, constantly evolving industries. So
Yeah.
it's if you're into like the fast paced and you want something a bit new, a bit interesting, I think esports is definitely that industry for sure. So I know you're relatively new to your role at Riot. If you want to tell us a bit more about that and how have you found it so far?
Yeah, it's basically my dream job because I had been in esports before, but I was mostly doing different things here and there. QA, I was testing apps, I was doing quality assurance. At one point, I was a data scientist. I was doing content production. I was a journalist even. And coming to Riot, it was this thing that I knew that like everybody had some awareness of, and I had played League before, really bad at it, but I love it. And I think just before this job, I had also seen Arcane already, and I was just so excited. So when I saw the listing for this particular position to work with Game Changers, it felt like made for me. And honestly, everybody I told about it when I was interviewing was like, oh my God, they wrote a job for you. So when I finally got hired, I was so excited. I fully expected a challenge, but I also expected to work with a lot of really passionate and intelligent people on a really important program. And that is exactly what I got. It's been really great. It's been maybe the most challenging position I've held so far in my very short career. I haven't even been working for 10 years yet, but it's definitely like the hardest thing I've done, but probably the most rewarding because there's such a huge Game Changers community out there that's at the receiving end of my work. And even in just the working on 6 months I've been at Riot, there's been so much impact to be made and that has been made. And there's also been such great feedback already. So I feel like I'm learning so quickly. A very exhausting exercise, but also one that feels good afterwards. Closest to a workout I'm getting to at this point, I would say. A mental workout of receiving feedback and putting it into action.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like Riot is one of like the goal companies for a lot of people that get involved in games and in esports. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's incredible. And the community is already like extremely well established. So I bet that comes with quite a lot of
Hmm.
pressure when it comes to like meeting the needs for the community. So
Absolutely.
like your past with Riot, have you played any like Riot titles in the past?
Yeah, mostly League. When Valorant came out, I was working in an esports company, and that was kind of the buzz for a while because it was a lot of people thought it was like very similar to CS:GO. So a lot of CS:GO friends wanted to try Valorant. I am really bad at aiming. So like it's not my thing. So I tried, but it's not really my strong point. I do play with people sometimes if they carry, but League is my home for the most part, and I'm not even extraordinarily great there. I just love the skins, and I have like a few favorite characters that I'm just obsessed with playing, even though I'm not really carrying there either. But it's definitely something that I picked up later in my life even. So I think I also missed the bus on like getting into it when I was really young, cuz like the first time I played League I was already like 23 or something. But you're never too old to appreciate a good like rainbow animation effect, which is why I started with Lux,
Yeah.
cuz
Yeah, I live
Lux
by
is like
that.
yes, Lux's stuff is like so shiny and cute, and I was like, okay, I like this game. I
I could
want
get
this
into
game.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So definitely, I have played the games. I had engaged with the content ahead of that, and I'd also been very aware of like the reputation Riot had for like really high quality free to play experience. So I felt so honored being chosen for this position, and it felt like a natural transition from like being a casual Riot fan to being able to be part of all of the magic.
Amazing. Yeah. So what's your Valorant rank?
Oh, yeah. Good question. I'm unranked, but I love to give everybody an estimate of like whatever the negative iteration of the highest rank would be. Like, I am deathly afraid of ranked. That's like my big secret. But actually, the reasons I'm afraid of ranked are a lot of the reasons that make actually existing in this space so difficult if you're a woman. And I feel like, I know a lot of people would be like, oh, wow, you're working with Valorant and you're not good. Actually, I have a really good idea of what it's like to play Valorant and try to be good in an environment that can exist sometimes, depending on who you're playing with. And I think it gives me the unique capability of having a good understanding of where some of our players and game changers are coming from and what kind of adversity they overcome in order to be there. Which makes me, I think, the world's biggest fangirl of Game Changers because the players are so extraordinary, and they all have their different ways of handling toxicity and like the environment itself. So yeah, unranked, huge fangirl, aspiring, top rank, everything, all of it into one. It's metaphysical.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm into that. I'm into that. But yeah, I mean, like you said, like playing ranked, playing online, like as a woman in esports or
Yeah,
even just in casual play, like it's a very different experience.
so
It's
hard.
something that a
Yes.
lot of people aren't like prepared for, and a lot of people don't really see it. And then when they do see it, they're like, "Oh, I had no idea that it was like this,
Yeah,
literally all the time."
absolutely every time.
So you've mentioned it a few times, and obviously it's what we're here to talk about. So for those who
Mhm.
don't know, what is Game Changers?
Yeah. So I'm the product lead for the EMEA iteration of Game Changers. So this is Europe, Middle East, and Africa, mostly Northern Africa. So the EMEA iteration of VCT Game Changers is set up to supplement the competitive season for Valorant, VCT, the Valorant Champions Tour, by creating new opportunities and exposure for the women in the Valorant esports ecosystem, which right now is mostly the tournament.
Incredible, incredible. So, how is it structured in EMEA?
Yeah, so currently it is I mean, it's a basic tournament circuit that goes in 3 series that last about a week at a time with a qualifier and like a top 32 that go into a main event. Um, This happens 3 times a year, and it has now, for the first time ever, a global championship that will allow the winners of each of the regions of Game Changers to come together and compete against each other for the world championship title. So
That's
this is actually
exciting.
new to the structure, but yes, it is super exciting because we sent 2 amazing teams, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how we stack up against the other regions.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's a women's tournament, right? Like that's the
Yes.
whole like vibe of Game
Yes.
Changers is getting more
Yes.
women involved in the
Mhm.
Valorant scene. So how do you
Yeah.
think Game Changers has helped develop the female Valorant scene as a whole? And are you seeing any uptake in interest that wasn't there before?
Yes. I think it's always super interesting because I feel like the interest was there. And I think that what we're seeing now is more of the trust to commit to a space that offers the opportunity for people who are interested to be able to engage the women of the space. So I would say in the 2 years that Game Changers has existed, we've definitely seen an increase in participation. This year, for example, in our most recent series, we actually maxed out our signups. So the format accommodates 128 teams. And at the time of the closure of the signups, we had 130 out of 128 teams signed up. This is up from 91 teams in the or in the second series, the one just before it, which is incredible. I mean, ultimately, I think we lost a few teams by the time it started, but we were still at 126. This puts us at over 600 women playing in one series for EMEA, and this has been incredible. It's been a wonderful confirmation of what, we've already known, that there are plenty of women out here ready to do this thing. And it also shows that Game Changers is moving in the right direction. It's getting closer to being a space where all of the women who are interested know that they can go to Game Changers and get their foot in the door and get that opportunity to compete and experience the ecosystem. Hopefully, to get to a point where they feel comfortable being in the rest of the ecosystem as well.
Yeah, I love that. And it's, like real prize pools and real opportunities
Yes,
and it's things that haven't been provided to women in the scene like yet. Like it's literally it's a
absolutely.
game changer, which is what
Yes.
I absolutely love. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So has commercial buy-in and reception been the same as it is for Riot's normal tournaments? Or is there still a way to go for game changers to be taken as seriously as the other ecosystems?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Game Changers EMEA is honestly an integral part of the entire Valorant Champions Tour, and as a result, we present it as such, an inseparable part of VCT when we discuss with potential partners. This is basically communicated from meeting number one, and it's an approach that ultimately helps the Valorant esports ecosystem stand out amongst others because we're aware of how diverse our player base and the viewer base is. I would say that Game Changers itself has helped us also to educate brands and communicate how diverse the gaming audience is. So hopefully we'll slowly get away from this perception, which is rather archaic, that the gaming community is men, and that if you're shaping, all of your brand material for that, that you're pretty much targeting the majority. This is not true. It hasn't been true for a very long time. And Game Changers is one way that we can further spread that gospel.
It's like we're half. We're literally we're half. We're half the gamers. Like, and
Yes.
you could it just doesn't make sense that everything is aimed towards
Yes.
men and all the sponsors are sponsoring like men's teams and going forward with men's tournaments and marketing materials and everything. Like, it's just they don't. It's we're here. Like we're here. We want to play. We want to be
Hello.
involved. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't play esports. I don't play games really, but I love esports, and I've just seen like there's so much opportunity for change and for growth. And I mean, that's what ESI
Mhm.
for All is here doing. It's we're here
Yeah.
to shed light on the stories that are making esports a more diverse place, or showing
Yes.
how diverse it already is.
Yeah,
Right? Like these
absolutely.
people are here, these stories are here. Like we just need to be heard. Like and
Exactly, just platform them. Absolutely.
absolutely, absolutely. So, does the VCT partner ecosystem have any impact on Game Changers operations in EMEA?
Well, things are just getting started, so there's like not a lot of confirmation to be made about what that actually looks like. But what I'm hoping for from my position as a lead for Game Changers is really that we're able to leverage the extended platform we kind of have through these partnerships to get more orgs on board with a Game Changers roster. Ideally the partner teams themselves, but if that should happen, hopefully this would encourage other orgs to see the value in investing in game changers, because I think ultimately this is the kind of investment and commitment really that we need in order to see that change on an industry level.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And so, with the success of Game Changers, can we expect to see more of this in Riot's other competitive titles?
I sure do hope so. I mean, Riot as a whole really continues to value diversity in the esports ecosystem, and we've definitely kind of paved the way for that via Valorant Game Changers. We've been following it really closely from the perspective of seeing like how we can expand it to titles like League. Um, those game communities are not one to one, so whatever we introduce, we want to make sure that it's something that fits the League of Legends community. You know, I think that while I would certainly love to see League Game Changers, we want to make sure that the things that we've learned about Valorant Game Changers are set up in a way that allows us to execute something like a League Game Changers really well. We're definitely super happy to see how many people are really excited about the possibility of something like that. I think as the popularity and the viewership continues to grow, the possibility of that expansion basically in line with this interest is something that is going to continue to be considered. But I would say stay tuned otherwise.
So, as the program has evolved from its beginnings in North American circuit in early 2021 to the EMEA region, its impact has been incredible. Some of the world's biggest esports organizations have since signed all-female Valorant teams, including G2, 10 Star, and Alliance. So, what are the next steps for Game Changers EMEA?
Yes, that is definitely the question. This is what we're working on right now, the next steps. And I would say that one of the things that we're looking at doing is leaning into the variety of problems that exist within the community. I think something that's not super obvious to people who are, maybe just allies of the space or outside looking in, or just women who don't have the same experience, like rooted in the attempt to become a professional esports player, is that there's a variety of layers in that problem too. So you have women who are backed by an organization, they have a salary, they have support, training, things like this. And then you have like also a lot of players who are maybe a group of school friends or people who met otherwise together online casually to join the Game Changers experience. What this leaves us with is maybe sort of like an unbalanced competition experience, I would say, where some people are really getting what they need from it because they're just there to gain the experience and give it a try. But like orgs, for example, look for something different from like unsigned and casual teams. But the problem is they're kind of at the core for everyone. These like professional women's teams also don't have a ton of exposure or a ton of competition opportunities to kind of like tell their story and show everybody what they've got. And then the amateur players, they have this problem too, but they also need to kind of skill up and like learn about how to thrive as a team and, potentially get signed one day, this kind of thing. So looking at Game Changers, I think one thing's really obvious is that one tournament for everybody is not perfect. I'm not really sure what the solution is to that yet. There are things that we want to try next year, I'd say. Um, Not really able to get into that too specifically just yet, but it's coming soon. I would say that the attempt to address this variety of issues is going to have been one of my more creative product
Yeah.
development experiences that I'm really excited to share. I am really a huge fan of listening and trying to see what's been done before, what things might get to the core of the problems that are kind of constantly being brought up over and over again. Where do these things overlap? Where are they completely separate? The next step for Game Changers is really leaning into the maturity of the tournament and figuring out how we can get better at delivering on what we set out to deliver, which is the safe space and opportunity and exposure platform.
Incredible. And like what is there in place when it comes to like supporting these players, when it comes to, like you said, all of the individual factors in their real lives that might make a difference when it comes to the tournament? Is there anything in place at the moment?
At the moment, no, since Game Changers is kind of a baby, but so is the entire Valorant esports ecosystem, really. I would say that for Game Changers specifically, now that we've had the 2 years that we've had, and 2 years of feedback and experience and trajectory of growth, I would say that we're actually in a really good position to put things in place to better support the players. This is one of the core principles of what we're looking at for 2023.
Yeah, I think like you said with Valorant, I think there's a reason we're seeing so many more women get involved in Valorant, and so many, more diverse people from marginalized backgrounds getting involved in the Valorant scene, is that because it's a new game. These like rules aren't set in stone. Like this ecosystem is still being developed, it's still being built, and it's not like, not to say bad things about like CSGO or anything like that, but they're older games where like things tend to be the way they've been for a while. So with Valorant, it's a really interesting perspective because it is a new esport, and like people are loving it, and there is so much room for growth. So like it's a really good place to start getting involved with Valorant, because nobody really has these rules for it yet. So there's still time for it to adapt and develop.
Yes, I agree 100%. I also think that Valorant itself serves to kind of invite it as well as a new game. It's very fresh. I would say the aesthetic itself kind of encourages like the subversiveness that's kind of inherent in trying to flip the status quo and introduce things that are pushing people's understanding of what the esports environment can really be. Not only from the audience perspective, but from everything up to like industry and organization. Like, how can we actually put action to these words? We recognize this issue. Now, what are we going to do about it? Basically, and the Valorant game itself, from the colorfulness of it to the variety of characters with their own different backgrounds and things, I think that this all just goes together so well. It's like a good, like edgy, exciting, fun, and really ripe for that kind of innovation.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a reason people from marginalized backgrounds want to play Valorant, and that's because they see themselves in the game and the people in the game
Yes.
and the other people that are playing it and the characters. Like, it was very obviously created from the start to be a game for everyone, which I think is amazing. So there has always been debates about whether segregated tournaments are a good thing or whether they aid the problem of less women on flagship teams. So what are the long-term goals for like the Valorant scene? Like, is there any plan for the introduction of mixed rosters in Valorant EMEA?
Yeah, something I found really interesting about the question when it does pop up in general is that a lot of times when I'm hearing this kind of criticism of the existence of game changers, it comes from people who don't necessarily have like the same experience as the women who are actually playing. The existence of game changers is actually rooted in feedback that we received from the players. There have been plenty of iterations of game changers toyed with in the past. And the feedback we got is mostly that the players themselves really prefer to have this space where they can know for sure they're not going to face toxicity from men, for example, and can really focus on their gameplay. This isn't to say that there's no toxicity ever between women, but it's definitely like not the kind of stuff that you get in the game on a day-to-day basis, depending on the kind of experience you're having. Um, and they've ultimately asked for this, and we've seen a lot of benefit in being able to focus on this very vulnerable core group of players who need a specific setup in order to thrive. And the question mark is really, how do we help them thrive? Figuring that out involves being able to see how things go for them in this space built just for them, identifying those problems and developing tailored solutions to those problems. This is really hard to do when you mix things up, because then you have to consider that there are a lot of other factors at play, more factors than there are already. There are already tons of factors just in the group of women, for example. So yeah, sure. Unlike physical sports, there's no like physiological reason or anatomical reason why anybody would need to have a separate league. We're also not trying to create the WNBA or anything. Like, we're not, hammering in on creating a women's only league. It's not the end. Game Changers is not the end. Game Changers is just the way to get to what we hope is a fully diversified Valorant ecosystem. One of the ways that we've identified to get there is by providing this opportunity for growth for women, so that when they're ready, when they feel equipped, they can move on to the rest of the ecosystem and actually be strong in their presence in the rest of the ecosystem, and ideally not struggle with the things that they would struggle with if they didn't have this avenue to get there, whether this is like not being supported by an org because they're not able to get access to one, not have enough training to be able to function properly as like a professional player on a team, manage playing with their studies, all kinds of stuff that it just maybe are more readily accessible to men who are more visible to orgs, for example. This is also a really good space for them to build those teams connections that they might need to also be able to enter the space better equipped from a variety of perspectives.
Yeah, so like you're not saying like this isn't like the competitive league for women in Valorant. This is a safe space for women who want to be comfortable around each other and who want to maybe prepare for moving on to a more competitive space after this and get that experience in a less toxic environment.
Definitely. I think there are definitely layers to the journey, of course. There are women who don't have a lot of experience who are looking for it, and there are women who have plenty of experience but don't have enough playtime. I think that Game Changers kind of encapsulates those journeys and creates a concrete pathway to being successful outside of this safe space that we've created in order to facilitate that growth and process. That's the end game. The end game is a bunch of comfortable, strong, and capable women players out in the rest of esports.
I
The
love that.
goal is not, this like high level women's league. It would be amazing still. But I think it's not necessary. And I think we might be even offering the most important allies like orgs the easy way out if we were to lean into that. Like, no pressure on creating, mixed roster, for example, if there's this wonderful women's league where you can focus all of your effort for women's teams. Maybe that's also a bit like strongly worded, but I do think that it's really important to incentivize the development of mixed rosters and ultimately a more diverse ecosystem.
Yeah, like you said, like you can't go from no women to women mixed into the current
Mm-hmm.
system. You need to build a system specifically for the women in order to introduce them into the current system. Like you can't go from 0 to 100, can you? There's got to be steps in between to make sure that when women do want to get involved in the sort of like the other rosters, the other tournaments, that they're not going to be shocked with the difference, like going
Definitely.
from nothing to that. Like obviously with when it
Yeah.
comes to like male players, they're provided with a lot more benefits that women players not necessarily aren't. So when that comes
Mm-hmm.
to sponsors, time to play, like being
Yeah.
raised on video games in a comfortable way, like they're used to this kind of
Yes.
environment. So it's not as simple as why can't we just have mixed rosters, because there's nothing for women already. Like you can't just do that. You have to have
Exactly.
steps in between and providing.
Invisibility is key.
Yeah, absolutely. And like getting, Game Changers is making women who might not have previously wanted to have anything to do with esports, let alone mixed rosters, wanting to get involved. So it's a stepping stone, but it's also creating a really important foundation.
One of the ways I really like to describe it to people is that there's this difference between equality and equity And I think in many ways, it's very easy to set up a tournament and say, women can play here. So now we have place for women to play and men to play. There is equal opportunity. Factually, sure. But I think that the rather perpetual assumption that this is enough, that if women have a place to play, that eventually they'll find their way into the rest of the ecosystem, is a bit too passive, and it's not rooted in an understanding of not only a path to pro for women, but an equitable path to pro for women that allows them to also have the tools that they need to really succeed in the space outside of Game Changers. This is really difficult to create, but is something that I personally am very much committed to, because I think that there is no hope for a diversified ecosystem if we're not prepared to face the reality of the problems that have ultimately been created by a system that is far larger than the Valorant ecosystem. Unfortunately, we don't exist in a vacuum.
No.
And this one tournament is not going to solve all of sexism.
It's not.
But,
Oh.
oh my God. But what we can do with Game Changers is change the Valorant ecosystem, which is a huge platform on its own. One that I hope would inspire not only other parts of, Riot's ecosystems, but also outside of Riot, like the industry in general. Unfortunately, there are so many orgs that are already on board. I mean, there are a lot of orgs that do have signed teams. But of course, we want to see more commitment there. We would love to see more brands getting involved, obviously, like from every side. It's this commitment to making sure that we are also creating the boost that is needed to make sure that the visibility and investment and involvement and all of this needs to be like hitting 110% everywhere for this to work. We can't just expect it to fix itself, which I think is ultimately where the expectation lies if you simply provide a moment for women to play.
Definitely. So, obviously, with you being relatively new to your role, what is your proudest accomplishment so far with Riot? With a follow up, like, what do you hope to achieve in this role long term?
Yeah, this is a really hard question for me because sometimes I can be a bit of a perfectionist. And I would say that um, I always want like the most perfect outcome before I feel like it's really an accomplishment. But this job actually specifically has been an opportunity for me to learn to recognize where those wins are happening anyway, like regardless of whether or not my barometer is like, this is perfect. So I would say that, unfortunately I didn't have the opportunity to like have the full planning hand in the things that are going on this year. It was mostly my job to just make sure everything was really successful. One thing I did have the opportunity to do, though, was connect with the community ahead of the third series and drum up that interest and invite those who were unsure of participating or not sure if they were eligible to participate to actually give it a shot. To understand that you don't need to be the absolute best to be able to try. That the cool thing about changing the game when you're a woman in esports is that you're already doing so much by choosing to be there. And I'm always saying this, presence is a win in this space. It really is, because presence is not easy. It's just not. It's not easy for players who are women. It can be hard for women working in the esports industry as well. It is so important because for every minute that you decide to stay, it's another opportunity for another woman or young woman out there looking in and seeing you there and seeing themselves represented there, giving them an opportunity to choose to be there because they know that someone like them can do it. Someone who may have gone through the same things or faced the same obstacles has done it before, letting them know that they can do it too. And I feel like my proudest accomplishment really so far has been the ability to communicate this to so many players or just tournament admin or whoever who are feeling hopeless, that there is hope and that by them being there, they're already doing so much, and winning is just the icing on the cake, honestly, because the
Yeah,
cake's already
definitely.
there.
Cake's already there. I love that. I love that. But yeah, like you were saying, obviously as a woman in esports, but on the other side, the business side of esports, like we actually held an event in London earlier this year where we had a women in esports networking hour where we had 5 incredible women from completely different areas of the industry just there just to talk to people, to talk to students, to talk to like mentees from like different programs that had come to attend the event. And it's just like, you can get here too. Like we had like publishers, we had marketing, we had players, we had like tournament organizers. And it's just like, esports isn't just players and tournaments and you know player
Yes.
managers and coaches and stuff like that. There is that other side of it as well, like even with your role as well, like product managing. Like there's so many different
Yeah.
ways that women can get involved in esports now that it's only fair that they should also be able to play.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you. This is exactly it.
So how do you see the next sort of 5 years going? Like, I'm going to ask you to predict something outside of like just your little Game Changers
Yeah.
bubble. How do you see the
Yeah.
next 5 years for women in esports?
You know, I'm a little bit of I like to call it realism, but other people call it cynicism. So I'm always like projecting really like slow growth for everything, and I'm always like, hey, you know, let's not lose our heads. Let's just commit to solutions. But I do have to say that the esports industry itself often surprises me with how quickly things can change with the right catalysts in place. We've already seen such amazing roster reviews or roster reveals, like so orgs building teams that we didn't expect to build teams, things like this. Different programs popping up to fulfill either similar goals to Game Changers or expanding this to you know, not just women but also non-binary participants, for example, or other people who identify as LGBTQ plus. And this is the kind of thing that I expect to see more of in the next 5 years. So this is like definitely not exclusive to Valorant. In gaming in general, this is something I expect to pick up. I would say, yeah, even with my cynicism, things actually are moving really quickly. I'm honestly very proud to be in even just a tiny part of this whole thing. I think we can definitely expect to see mixed rosters. We can definitely expect to see more women heading things like initiatives, but also just regular gaming stuff too. This is part of what that should look like, you know, not just women doing DNI stuff, but also other things in gaming. And this is what I hope to see basically off of the momentum of not only things like Game Changers, but other initiatives that are like focused on producing that kind of change, because the ripple effect and the impact that it will have on the rest of the industry is actually, I think, the real goal at the end of the game. You know, this is just one method to moving us in that direction.
Yeah, I've been like you said, like esports moves so quickly. I've always said that 1 year in esports is 4 years in every other industry.
Yes,
Like it changes and it
absolutely.
adapts so quickly. Like it's insane. So yeah, I think like even with that little bit of cynicism, which I also have because I read the statistics.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
Stats. Get the numbers, you know? It's like that. I understand. I
Uh,
totally understand.
but yeah, like it's definitely more evolving than other industries that suffer from the same problem as us. Like, I mean, how long has traditional sports been around? And that's still nowhere up to scratch when it comes to, you know, equality and equity throughout every sport. So esports is already doing much better now than traditional
Yes.
sports was when they were the same age as esports. So
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
So, speaking of stats, I'm actually going to move on to some fun little segments that we're going to be doing at the end of all the
Okay.
podcasts. So,
Perfect.
this one is actually 2 truths and a lie. So, I'm going to read you 3 statements, and you're going to have to tell me which one of them is the lie. Okay.
Okay.
So, statement 1: there are no women esports players in the top 300 earners. Okay. Number 2: Only 0.002% of the $235 million awarded in Dota 2 has been won by women. And number 3, only 10 of the top 100 paid creators on Twitch are female.
Okay. I think that the last one is the lie. I feel like it's less.
You are correct. It's actually only 3. Your cynicism came into clutch here.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Spoiler alert though, I actually did look into those stats because I loved reminding people of this when they, were going on their hot tub stream tirades. I was like,
oh, they're making numbers. So much money doing this. And it's like, no, they're not.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite stats actually. So
only 3 of the top 100. And then the other 2 are true as well, which is horrifying. Only 0.002% of $235 million awarded in Dota 2.
Less than a percent. Less
than half a, like, it's tiny.
It's so bad.
$6,300. Oh,
it's so bad.
It's so
and
then there are no women esports players in the top 300 earners, which is also sad.
Unfortunately, I was aware of.
We knew that one. Yeah.
Come on, we are getting the bag. We are getting the bag.
We got to get that bag. Yeah, we got to get that bag. Okay, so now I'm going to do some word association. I'm just going to say a word and you're going to tell me what the first thing that comes into your mind is. It doesn't have to be one word long. It can just be whatever you think of when I say that word. Okay? So, Riot.
Fist bump.
Valorant.
Red.
League of Legends.
Morgana, my favorite champ.
Killjoy.
Oh, Killjoy is so cute. All I can think is cute. She's cute.
She's so cute. No, if that's what you thought of, that's what you thought of.
Yeah.
Okay, Vandal.
Less cute.
Women in esports.
Guild X and G2 goes in.
Love that.
Our teams. That. Yeah, love it. There you go.
And Game Changers.
Mostly gold, actually, because that's the Game Changers color at this moment, but also me.
You. Me. It's me.
Changing the game 24/7.
Single-handedly changing the game.
Yes.
That's what you should change your LinkedIn bio to.
Oh my gosh. I may have to do this just for you. I may have to.
Changing the game.
I may have to.
I will be doing a follow-up.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, and what 3 items would you take to a deserted island?
Oh my god. Okay, definitely my dog. Oh, my dog would hate this. No. And that's also probably like animal cruelty. Okay, not my dog. I would say right now for sure my Steam Deck. Because I'm loving my Steam Deck and my Power Wash Simulator. Hopefully Power Wash Simulator can be included with the Steam Deck, right?
Yeah, well, I think if, it's installed, like you can have all your games on there when you take it. I think that counts.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate this. So definitely the Steam Deck. At least 6 bottles of Powerade, blue Powerade, because I love blue Powerade.
You're a Powerade person.
I mean, I'm American. We love like blue stuff. Blue is a flavor in the US.
I know. I love it. I got one of those giant slushies from 7-Eleven when I was in America earlier this year, and my whole face turned blue. It was incredible. I love it.
What flavor is it? Blue.
It's just blue.
Exactly. So blue Powerade for sure. And then probably also a satin pillowcase with a pillow in it, because I want my hair to be looking good for as long as possible.
Got to protect it. Got to protect that hair. Yes. I love that. And we also obviously announced your participation on the podcast earlier this week and asked anybody if they had any questions. So we have an audience question from Jade Al-Glavaki. They said, I have a question. Your job with big responsibilities is necessarily accompanied by stress. What do you do to evacuate this stress?
I guess I gave a little bit of a hint to that earlier, but I'm
Power
a really
washer
big fan
simulator.
of, yes, simulators. I love Power Wash Simulator so much. I'd say that this is like my go-to de-stressor. Unfortunately, none of the competitive games I play would qualify for
No.
de-stress, but gaming is actually my hobby. This is one of the reasons why it is so sacred to me, and I try to keep it actually as separate from my job as possible so that I can still continue to love games. This will always be the thing that I do to de-stress. There's very rarely been any situation where I have been too stressed to play a game. It's usually like, what game, you know? Am I going to be like manically playing through Resident Evil Village on speed runs, or am I going to
Am
be
I going to
headed
be
into
running a
Power Wash
little
Simulator?
B&B for bears?
Yes, exactly. Am I going to be creating myself in The Sims for like the 500th time to
Yeah. And
like
then
get
as
my
soon
life
as
under
I
control
finish creating the
somewhere?
characters and building the house, I start anew.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I would say would be my main de-stressor. De-stressor continues to be games.
I mean, they always say don't work in the industry that you use to
Yeah.
de-stress, but I think games is one of those things that there's so many different kinds of games that
Yeah.
there's always something.
Exactly.
There's always something that you're going to want to play and you're going to want to do. I'm also a big fan of like cozy
Absolutely.
games. So I was big into
Yes.
Animal Crossing. I've been playing this game where you run a little spa for capybaras,
Oh
which
my
has
gosh, you're
been
gonna have to tell me
amazing.
about that
I
one.
will
I
send
just
you the
finished
link to
Dreamlight
that.
Valley.
Oh,
Yes, please
amazing.
do.
Yeah, I think it's just called Capybara Spa, but it's amazing. You just give them a little soak with some like oranges in there with them. I love it. I love it because I love capybaras as
I love
well.
this. I'm already a fan. I love this.
I just want to say a massive thank you for coming on and speaking to us. I know you are incredibly busy. You're a busy, busy woman. So
For now, yes.
where can people find you and find out more about Game Changers?
Yes, I would say that the best place for the moment for me is definitely Twitter. Since my name is Ashley Washington and it's a very common name somehow. My parents went for the top names in the 90s. I would say that the best way is to go to Twitter, look at my name, take all the vowels out, and you've got my username. It's
Also, your
some form of
username for
Shlee
Twitter will be
Washington.
displayed
Yes.
directly below your
Okay.
little nameplate when we put this podcast together as
Perfect.
well. So,
Perfect. Find me on Twitter. Find me on Twitter. Otherwise, I
share
would
your
say
stress-free
I.
game recommendations with both me and Ashley,
Yeah.
please.
Yes, please. I'm here for it. Thank you. And thank you for having me, Riley. This has been really great.
No, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it, and I appreciate all the incredible work that you've been putting into Game Changers. It's been amazing, and I have a feeling it's only going to get better.
I hope so. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Ashley.